Fuel was pumped into the tank above the bursting tire, overfilling it.
And so you get this great lump of rubber slamming into the underside of the wing by tank number 5, literally like a missile strike, and it set up a shockwave in the fuel in that tank, and the energy in that shockwave had absolutely nowhere to go because there's no airspace. And I think it is quite reasonable to argue that if the fuel tanks had not been overfilled for that takeoff, and this is my view, I emphasize that, but I think it's quite possible that the subsequent disaster might not have happened.
Air France agree that fuel pumping is normal procedure, but dispute the tank could have been overfilled.
We transfer between 800 kilos to 1 ton, but always with automatic level detection systems. There cannot be any overfilling of a tank with these systems, which are automatic.
But it's not only operating procedures that have come under scrutiny. Serious questions have been raised about whether Concorde had fatal design flaws.
A great big buzz going around saying that Concorde was inherently unsafe, it was a fragile bird. And that, quite honestly, in my opinion, is a load of rubbish.
Don't try and tell me that there were design deficiencies in Concorde. I do not accept that. I spent 15 years flying that airplane, and I regard it as the safest airplane I have ever flown.
In the 10 years since the crash, the big question is, was Concorde an accident waiting to happen? What exactly caused the Air France Concorde crash, and who was to blame, has become the subject of a long and bitter court battle. Continental Airlines and 5 individuals from America and France are charged with involuntary manslaughter. All deny the charges. In a glass case lie key exhibits, including the metal strip from the Continental Airlines DC-10 that is alleged to have burst the Concorde's tire. Continental has hired one of France's leading lawyers, who argues that the airline is not to blame.
They want to make this strip into the guilty party. It's so much easier to place the blame on others. Can you imagine for a moment that a plane could crash because of a small strip measuring 3 centimeters wide, 48 centimeters long, and 1 millimeter thick? Surely a plane could resist that.
Aircraft are built to withstand tire bursts. But Concorde has had 57 burst or deflated tires, some with near catastrophic results. The most dangerous and dramatic has striking parallels with the 2000 crash. On the 14th of June 1979, a Concorde flight was leaving Washington for Paris. Among the passengers was an aviation consultant, Bill Lightfoot. His seat window had a view of the wing.
I boarded Concorde, sat down. We then went through the normal pre-takeoff procedures, and then just as the aircraft rotated, getting ready to take off, there was a violent shudder. The aircraft shook like that. And then just almost at the same instant, a large object flashed by my window vertically. And there was a big jagged hole in the wing and some sort of fluid spewing out of the hole. And I was thinking, what would happen if this aircraft tried to go supersonic? There's no doubt in my mind, and engineers I've talked to said the same. It would have just come apart.
Ma'am, could you please come?
The flight attendant came, and I said, "You've got a problem here. There's a hole in the wing." And she said, "No, that's the flaps." And I said, no, that is not the flaps. So I told her, go get someone. Someone's got to look at that.
Could you please get a flight crew?
Actually, although it's hard to believe, they'd started serving drinks.
Would you like a drink, sir?
No, I don't want a drink. I'd like a flight crew member, please.
Okay, I will inform someone.
So then the co-pilot or engineer came back, and I just literally took his head and pushed it over so he could see out of the small window, like that, so he could see through the hole. He could see this ragged hole in the wing, and he said, I'll never forget, he said, Mon Dieu, and he just turned ashen. And then he zipped up the aisle. Then just less than a minute later, they jerked the throttles back, and you could feel the plane violently slow down.
Photographs taken at the time show the fuel spilling from the aircraft. 2 tires had exploded, and wheel shrapnel had penetrated the wing. With a shattered undercarriage, the Air France pilot made a difficult landing. Shortly after the incident, France's aviation watchdogs advised further investigation of the wings and possible modifications.
These modifications did not take place. Its recommendations were not implemented. What did the recommendations consist of? To strengthen the fuel tanks with Kevlar.
In fact, the exact same modifications that would be made to Concorde after the 2000 crash.
In other words, if they had followed these recommendations, there would not have been all those deaths.
Airbus, then Aerospatiale, and Concorde's manufacturer says that at the time, it agreed with aviation authorities to focus on the causes of the accident rather than the effects, and so the wings were not modified. But possible causes of the crash have also focused on Air France's maintenance, and in particular, a large tubular spacer.
I was looking at the wreckage in the sheds at Le Bourget with a British Airways engineer who had come over to assist, and he noted fairly rapidly that this spacer was missing, and it was in fact found subsequently.
Investigators later found the missing spacer in Air France's workshops. It had been left off Concorde's undercarriage 7 days earlier during routine maintenance.
Clearly, and Air France has always said it, it was a maintenance error.
One of the functions of the spacer was to keep the wheels, the 4 wheels in that undercarriage truck, locked in proper alignment. With the spacer missing, those wheels could wobble around a bit like wheels on a supermarket trolley. Those wheels skewed around and effectively steered the airplane off the left-hand side of the runway.
Missing Chirac's 747 by just 30 feet. But the French BEA investigation concluded that the missing spacer had not contributed to the crash.
It's an important question to know whether a missing spacer might be linked in any way with the accident. Clearly, whether it was the BEA or the legal experts, or all the specialists we heard during the trial, they all said no. It had no effect.
Yeah, the BA report concluded that the missing spacer was not relevant to the accident. I believe personally there's an argument to say that the possible effects of this on the steering of the aircraft and on the tyres possibly could be looked at somewhat further.
But the most startling claim by Continental is that 18 eyewitnesses, including firemen and other airline pilots, saw Concorde on fire 700 meters before it hit the metal strip.
Extraordinary. The plane was on fire, and the firefighters were at right angles to the Concorde when it passed in front of them. And firefighters, I think, know what a fire is.
One of those to claim he saw Concorde on fire before it hit the metal strip